Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to hear the voice of someone you lost on the most important day of your life? This is a story about love, loss, and a surprise so powerful it brought an entire room to tears. Ava never imagined her wedding day would feel so heavy. It was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life. Yet deep inside, something was missing. Someone was missing. Her grandfather, Daniel, had always been her biggest supporter. Growing up, he was the one who cheered the loudest at our school events, the one who gave the warmest hugs, and the one who always told her, "One day, I'll be there when you walk down the aisle." But life didn't go as planned. Daniel passed away at the age of 80, just months before Ava got engaged. His absence left a silence in her heart that nothing could fill. As the wedding day got closer, that silence only grew louder. Every dress fitting, every decoration choice, every moment that should have been joyful reminded her of him. "I just wish he could be there," she whispered one night, sitting beside her fiancé Ethan. "I'd give anything just to hug him one more time." Ethan didn't say much at that moment. He simply held her hand tightly. But inside, something shifted. He made a quiet promise to himself. He wasn't going to let her feel alone on that day. What Ava didn't know was that Ethan had been planning something deeply personal, something that would take months of thought, courage, and emotion. It all started long before the proposal. Back when Daniel's health had begun to decline, Ethan had a feeling time was limited. He wasn't even engaged to Ava yet, but he already knew she was the one. And he knew how much her grandfather meant to her. So one evening, he picked up his phone and called Daniel. "Sir, I wanted to ask you something important," Ethan said, his voice slightly nervous. "I planned to ask Ava to marry me, but I wanted your blessing first." There was a pause on the other end. Then Daniel chuckled softly. "You don't need my permission," he said warmly, "but you have my full blessing. Take care of her. That's all I ask." Ethan smiled, but he didn't hang up. Instead, he asked something unexpected. "Would you say a few words? Maybe something I could keep for the future?" Daniel agreed without hesitation. What Ethan recorded that day would later become one of the most meaningful moments of their lives. Fast forward to the wedding week. The venue was beautiful. Flowers lined the aisle, soft music played in the background, and guests arrived with smiles and excitement. Everything looked perfect. But Ava's heart still felt incomplete. On the morning of the ceremony, she sat quietly in her bridal suite, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was flawless, her dress was stunning, but her eyes told a different story. Tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. "I wish you were here, Grandpa," she whispered. Meanwhile, just outside the room, Ethan stood holding a small box. His hands trembled slightly. Inside that box was something he had carefully prepared, something he hoped would bring comfort instead of pain. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Ava's bridesmaids let him in. They noticed the box but said nothing. "I have something for you," Ethan said gently. Ava looked confused. "This isn't part of the plan." "Just trust me," he replied. She slowly took the box and sat down. Her fingers hesitated for a moment before opening it. Even before she saw what was inside, her eyes filled with tears again. Inside the box was a teddy bear. But this wasn't just any teddy bear. It was dressed in a tiny suit with small glasses, looking almost exactly like her grandfather. Ava froze. Her hands began to shake. "Oh my," she whispered, barely able to speak. Alongside the bear was a handwritten note. She opened it carefully. "Today is a day I wish your grandfather could be here," the note read. "Since I can't bring him back, I wanted to give you something that carries his presence. Hold this close whenever you need him. Press its paw and listen." Ava covered her mouth. The room went completely silent. With trembling fingers, she pressed the bear's paw. For a split second, nothing happened. And then, a familiar voice filled the room. "Now is the time to make important choices. And I'm so proud of the choices you've made," Daniel's voice said, clear and full of warmth. "I couldn't be happier for you both. Always be honest with each other, support one another, and never forget how much you are loved." Ava collapsed into tears, not quiet tears, but deep, overwhelming sobs that came straight from her heart. The kind of crying that releases months of pain all at once. Her bridesmaids started crying. Even Ethan couldn't hold back his tears. It felt like for just a moment. Daniel was there, right there in the room. Ava hugged the bear tightly against her chest. "This means everything to me," she said through tears. "You have no idea." Ethan knelt beside her. "I just wanted you to feel like he's still with you," he said softly. And in that moment, she did. As the ceremony began, Ava walked down the aisle holding the bear close. Her mother gently carried it part of the way, as if symbolizing Daniel's presence beside them. Guests noticed, and many were moved without even knowing the full story. When Ava reached the altar, she looked at Ethan with tearful eyes. But this time, there was something different. It was peace. The ceremony continued, filled with love, laughter, and emotional moments. But the presence of that small teddy bear made it unforgettable. During the photos, the bear was placed carefully among family members. It wasn't just an object. It was a symbol of love that doesn't disappear, even after someone is gone. Later that evening, as the music played and guests celebrated, Ava sat quietly for a moment, holding the bear again. She pressed its paw one more time, just to hear his voice, and she smiled through her tears, because somehow, in a way she never expected, her grandfather had been there all along. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this remind us of something important. Love doesn't end. It finds a way to stay. The music slowly faded into the background as the evening continued. But for Ava, time felt different now. Something inside her had changed. The heaviness she'd carried for months. The quiet sadness that followed her everywhere. It wasn't gone completely, but it felt lighter, like someone had gently lifted part of the weight off her heart. She sat at a small table near the dance floor, still holding the teddy bear in her lap. Her fingers traced the tiny glasses stitched onto its face. It looked so much like her grandfather that it almost didn't feel real. Ethan walked over, watching her carefully. "You okay?" he asked softly. Ava looked up, her eyes still slightly red, but glowing in a way they hadn't before. "I don't even know how to explain it," she said. "It hurts, but it also feels like he's right here with me." Ethan nodded. "That's all I wanted," he replied. "For you to feel that." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat together, letting the emotions settle. Across the room, guests were laughing, dancing, celebrating. But many of them had already heard about the surprise. Whispers had spread quickly. "Did you hear what he did?" That was her grandfather's voice. "I've never seen anything like it." Even people who barely knew Ava felt emotional just thinking about it. Ava's mother approached slowly, her eyes filled with tears again. But this time, they were softer tears. "Can I?" she asked gently, pointing to the bear. Ava nodded and handed it to her. Her mother held it carefully, almost like it was something fragile and sacred. She pressed the paw. Once again, Daniel's voice filled the air. For a brief second, her mother closed her eyes. And when she opened them, she smiled. "He would have loved this," she said quietly. "He would have been so proud." Ava swallowed hard, trying to hold back another wave of emotion. "I think he knows," she whispered. The night carried on, but something about the atmosphere had shifted. The wedding wasn't just about celebration anymore. It had become something deeper. It became a reminder that love doesn't disappear. It transforms. Later, during the reception speeches, Ethan stood up with the microphone in his hand. The room slowly grew quiet. He looked around at the guests, then at Ava. "I wasn't sure if I should share this," he began, "but I think it's important." Ava tilted her head slightly, curious. Ethan took a breath. "A long time ago, before I even proposed, I called Daniel," he said. "I asked him for his blessing." A few guests exchanged surprised looks. "And during that call, I recorded his voice," Ethan continued. "I didn't know exactly how I would use it. I just knew it mattered." Ava's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't known that part. "I kept that recording safe," he said. "And when Ava told me how much she wished he could be here today, I knew what I had to do." The room was completely silent now. "I didn't want him to just be a memory," Ethan added. "I wanted him to be part of this day." Ava covered her mouth again, tears forming once more. But this time, they were mixed with something else. Gratitude. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. Ethan looked at her directly. "You are the most important person in my life," he said. "And I'll always do everything I can to remind you how loved you are." There wasn't a single dry eye in the room. Even the guests who had tried to stay composed couldn't hold back anymore. Ava stood up and walked toward him. Without saying a word, she wrapped her arms around him tightly. The entire room erupted into soft applause. But it wasn't loud or wild. It was warm, emotional, real. As the night went on, people took turns holding the teddy bear. Some smiled, some cried, some simply listened in silence. Each time the paw was pressed, Daniel's voice brought a new wave of emotion. And somehow, it never felt repetitive. It felt alive. At one point, Ava stepped outside for some fresh air. The cool evening breeze brushed against her face. She looked up at the sky. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel that painful emptiness. Instead, she felt connected. "Thank you," she whispered softly. "I felt you today." Behind her, the door opened quietly. Ethan joined her, slipping his hand into hers. "Running away already?" he joked gently. She smiled. "Just needed a moment," she replied. They stood there together in silence for a few seconds. No music, no noise, just the quiet night around them. "I used to think this day would be too hard without him," Ava admitted. "But now, I think this might be exactly how it was supposed to be." Ethan looked at her. "What do you mean?" She glanced down at the bear in her hands. "I didn't just remember him today," she said. "I felt him." Ethan squeezed her hand. "That's something no photo could ever do," he said. She nodded. Exactly. They walked back inside together, ready to rejoin the celebration. But something about their steps felt lighter now. The rest of the night was filled with dancing, laughter, and small, meaningful moments. Moments that didn't feel overshadowed by loss anymore. Instead, the memory of Daniel had become part of the joy. As the final song of the night played, Ava stood in the center of the dance floor, holding the teddy bear one last time. She pressed its paw again. "Always be honest with each other. Support one another." His voice echoed once more. She closed her eyes and smiled. "I promise," she whispered. Ethan walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her gently. "Ready to go?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." As they left the venue together, hand in hand, Ava took one last look back. Not with sadness, but with peace, because she realized something important. Some people may leave this world, but the love they give never truly goes away. It stays in memories, in voices, in the smallest, most unexpected moments. And sometimes, it comes back to you in ways you could never have imagined. So if there's someone you miss, someone you wish could be with you today, remember this: love doesn't need a physical presence to exist. It lives on in the things we hold close, and in the people who remind us of it. And as long as that love is remembered, it's never truly gone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.